And we're
Okay,
live.
sweet. All right, so everybody who is listening to this, my name is Thomas. You guys go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Joe, Brewington.
We got Alan Brea in the building.
And we are three students at USF doing our senior capstone for communication. We are introducing our global goal. We are going through the eighth global goal, which is decent work and economic growth. The target we picked was 8.6, which is promoting youth in employment, education, and training. We felt very passionate about this topic, so this is why we chose to create a podcast on this. This will be the first segment of our five-segment podcast with the different topics of this goal. So today's topic will be youth in training. So Joe had the great ability to interview someone on about training. So Joe, if you'll introduce who that person is, just give a little background and then play
Sure,
the interview.
absolutely. So I have the pleasure of knowing for a very long time a gentleman named Matthew Clapp, who is a owner of a couple of businesses, but his main business is Total Plumbing Solutions Incorporated, which is located in Tampa, Florida. He services primarily the Pinellas, Pasco, and Hillsborough County areas. Is his service areas. He's been in plumbing for about 30 years, and he has a very successful small business. And I had the pleasure of interviewing him and kind of picking his brain on the trades that he learned, how he got into the trades, and also how and what he would do to recommend people in the trades. He had some interesting things to say about plumbing in general and the lack of young adults going into a vocation like plumbing, electrical work, that's those kind of trade crafts. It was interesting to me because he said the average plumber is like 60 years old, in their 60s, and that's kind of mind blowing, fellas, if you think about it. The average plumber is in your 60s, and we're talking about educating our youth. Who's going to flush our toilets when we're old? You know what I mean? Like that's something kind of crazy. So I think that it's an important topic, and I think that he had some pretty interesting things to say. So I think that I'm sure we'll have some food for fodder once we listen to the interview, um, and kind of have some interesting things to say about what we would recommend to our youth and to the youth in our local areas if they're interested in getting into a trade craft. And because I mean, honestly, there's some serious money to be made here, fellas. And it's not just about money, but it's a trade. It's something that people really need. I mean, raise your hand if you know how to, plumb a house. Like, can you repipe your house? I mean, I can because I've watched him for 30 years and I've done it with him. But most people don't know how to flush, clear their toilet when it clogs. They got to call a plumber. What are you going to do on the weekends when your toilet's not working? So it was pretty interesting to hear. So a little background with that. Matt is I think Matt's 49. He's about the same age as me. And he's been doing this a while. And his company is pretty successful. I mean, he makes a very good living doing this, and he has a pretty large small business. I mean, I think he employs in roughly 50 to 100 people. So he does. I mean, it's a small business for sure, but I mean, it's very profitable, and he does a really good job. So, do you want me to go ahead and start it?
Yeah,
You
that'd be
want to do
great.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me. Okay, here we go. Is for Matt Clapp, owner, CEO, and president of Total Plumbing Solutions Incorporated and Total Properties Management Incorporated. So, Matt, tell me, how did you start in your trade?
Well, as a young man that had OJT in high school, and I had to keep busy, and I wanted to make money, not bag groceries, and I was good with my hands, so I had an opportunity to learn plumbing, so I did.
What made you interested in a trade versus going to college?
Well, My parents didn't really have the money for college, and I wanted to make money now. I didn't feel like studying subjects that didn't benefit me. So, I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to make money immediately.
And you're good with your hands. I
Right.
think that was something that,
Yeah.
make money right away, not have to worry about paying to college, going into
Right.
debt for that. So what drove you to obtain your master plumbing license and versus staying as like a
Well, as a
journeyman?
journeyman, you can work under a master plumber, but to own and operate a licensed insured business in Florida, you have to obtain your master's plumbing license and show 10 years of on the job.
Okay. And when did you obtain your master plumbing license? How old were you?
I
28?
was
29?
Yeah, I was just shy of 30, somewhere around there.
So what advice would you give a young high school student with an interest in starting in your trade?
Well, in Hillsborough County, they shut down all trade schools, but as of last year, the governor DeSantis reopened up trade schools in high schools now. So
I didn't know that. So they
Yeah.
shut down trade schools?
Rick Scott did, and then DeSantis opened it back up. Yeah.
So would you say that it's better or more advantageous for a young student out of high school to go to a trade school and learn the trade there, or
Well,
to learn on the
definitely.
job?
Well, you're gonna learn in school, and you're also gonna learn on the job. But the trade schools, they teach you everything, fittings, this, that, why, and they actually have hands-on. So as a young man, you're gonna get hired, or a young woman, either one, you're gonna get hired before somebody off the street that wants to learn.
Okay. And would you say that you would, if you were interviewing someone who was, say they had 2 years of just apprenticeship versus going to a trade school, would you have a preference on hiring?
It depends. If they're the same age and one guy's been on the job and one guy's been through school, I would lean towards the guy in school, because there's a lot of companies out there that teach you bad habits in the wrong way. So in school, they're going to teach you the basics, and not just how, but why.
Gotcha.
And they also teach you codes, which is very important.
Especially if you're trying to go further and,
Right,
and obtain
right.
your master license. All right. So, as a local entrepreneur and small business owner, what are some ways that you give back to the local community?
Well, we have quite a few charities that we sponsor. The one that is most relevant to plumbing industry is a charity for veterans. We go into a disabled veteran's house and remove their bathtub and turn it into a walk-in shower or a wheel-in shower.
Make it more handicap
Right.
accessible.
So they can bathe, right.
That's cool. That's a good thing. What does you or your company do to promote apprenticeships for young adults?
Well, now that they do have an apprenticeship program available, but it's a high school apprenticeship. We encourage them to do that. A lot of times we don't get to the chance or the opportunity to talk with younger kids that are still in high school because it's a newer program. But the program that they have now is very good, and the instructor is very good at what he does.
So this is like a high school thing, so it's paid for by our taxes, like they go
Yes,
to the high
it
school?
costs nothing, right,
Okay.
to learn a
So it's
trade.
not like I have to go and pay,
Nope.
like Hillsborough Community
Nope.
College and
Nope.
pay to learn a
Nope.
tech skill or whatever?
It's
Okay,
all free.
cool. Do you think there's a significant advantage to going to trade school? We kind of covered that, but do you think there's an advantage going to trade school versus learning on the job?
Absolutely. In high school, you really can't be on the job. You have to be 18 to be covered by insurance. So instead of waiting until you're 18, you'll be 3 or 4 years ahead of the game if you go through the apprenticeship school. And any young person that goes to the apprenticeship school can walk in any plumbing company right now and get hired on the spot. That's how little training.
Like on the job you need.
Yeah.
So what are if there are any, what are some negatives about trade school?
Well, it's all perspective, but if you go to trade school and you end up not wanting to continue that trade, you kind of wasted your time, in my opinion. But
I'm just making sure it's still recording. All right.
I don't really see any negatives. This trade industry is highly sought after.
So, and we were kind of talking about this before, but you were telling me that some of the average age of a plumber in the U.S. is 62.
62, something like that.
Something
Yes.
in that neighborhood.
The young kids just don't get into trades anymore.
Puppy.
And then one last question. What advancement does going through a trade get you on your career path? And we kind of talked about that a little bit too.
It gives you the biggest jump start ever. And instead of starting at minimum wage, you could start off at more money than any of your friends are making.
And higher wage, and also you're coming in with more basic knowledge.
Yes.
You're more about what fitting goes
And the best
where,
thing
how to
about
put
the
things out.
plumbing industry is you can never plateau out. There's always advancements for your entire career.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
So I thought he made some interesting points there. Sorry about the barking of the dogs. He has 5 dachshunds, so they were running around a little crazy there. I think he made some interesting points. I think the biggest takeaway that I got from that was, as someone who is a very successful entrepreneur and who literally started from scratch and built his business into a multi-million-dollar business, I think that he had some important insights to the trade and that vocation, as far as, in his opinion, he felt like it was better to actually go to trade school than to like just get hired on like he did. He didn't go to a trade school. He learned on the job. So he walked in at 18, and he had a friend of the family who owned a plumbing company, and he started working. And he learned how to plumb by being like what they call in the industry a gopher. So you go for this part, you go for that part, you go get a shovel, you dig a hole. Like that's how he learned. And then he progressed into a service plumber where he started to work for major companies like Sears Roebuck back in the day, RJ Kilty, which is kind of a local business, local plumbing business that some people might be familiar with. But I thought it was interesting that he said that he would definitely recommend going to school versus hiring somebody from off the street, because they can be taught the right way versus somebody teaching them their way. You know what I mean? I thought that was an interesting point.
I agree.
I got a
And
few, yeah, I got a few takeaways from that as well. Kind of like you were saying, having that, going through trade school as opposed to just on-job training kind of gives you some level of security, because if you end up at the wrong company and that falls through, where do you go? Like if you don't have connections, you have to have another form of connections, or a form of like another job, something. And having that trade school and having that on your record kind of gives you that security. I think another thing he was saying, the entry level positions that I start higher, because you're
yeah,
learning specific skills, and those skills are very valuable. And I feel like trade schools are more specific, whereas some people view college as too vague. Like some people don't like having to take these classes that don't necessarily pertain to their major, or they think it's
yeah.
too long, or this, that, and the third. But
He kind of
trade
mentioned
school
that
seems to
too.
be,
where
Yeah,
he
it
was
seems to be a little
saying,
more
I
specific.
don't want to take these classes that mean nothing, they're not going to apply to my life, and blah blah blah. And all the prerequisites to get a degree, you have to take all these classes, these basic math classes and courses like biology and all. I mean, if you're not going to be a doctor, who cares about biology? Like, I'm not splitting the atom for a living. And I think that's an interesting point. And also, he said, to your point, Thomas, that um, you can start at a higher level as far as salary is concerned, but there's no plateauing in plumbing.
Mhm.
Like, you can start. Let's say you work for one plumber for 3 years, and let's say you get tired of the owner. You don't like the guy, or you want to move. You move somewhere else. Let's say you move from Florida to Georgia. It's a transferable trade. Plumbing is plumbing. All pipes are fitted the same way. People sit on the toilet and go to the bathroom the same way in the entire world. So it's a trait that is transferable, and you can get a job almost immediately and make a good salary and a good living and support your family by doing it. I think that's important for our youth to understand.
I think he made a good point too. I mean, Thomas mentioned it earlier in one of his previous points, but as far as like the importance of trade school over going into on-the-job training out the gate, meaning what Matthew mentioned about how you might learn on the job and they might have ill practices. They might not do things exactly by the book or how they're supposed to be done. And that information might not be transferable to the next job. Whereas in trade school, you kind of learn the proper basics and that foundation that you can really apply to multiple different places. So that's major.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, you can make a really good living. Like, listen, I struggled personally speaking. I went to college early. I went on a scholarship, an athletic scholarship, and I didn't make any money. And that was before athletes were getting paid. You couldn't make anything in college. If you had a job, you had to quit the team. You couldn't have a job and play in a Division I school. And so they would have, maybe I shouldn't say this on the podcast, but I guess it's okay now with NIL. But like, they would have these special jobs where you can be like, you make sure the sprinklers come on Brewington. Like, they come on at 6 a.m., sit out there and the sprinkler comes on, and you find an envelope in your locker. Like, that kind of thing was going on. And now it's like, oh, you can hold this drink and drink this on the sideline. I'm going to give you $2,000. And you can literally make a living. But for normal people who don't have that advantage, you go out, you graduate. Let's say you're a struggling student in high school, you never went, or you just were not a good student, and you graduate high school, but you make it, you graduate. You don't really have the money or the grades to go to college. So what do you do? Are you
Yeah,
gonna, flip burgers? Like, what are you gonna do? And I
I
think
like
this is a
that point.
viable option for youth. Don't you think, Thomas?
Yeah, no, I like that point. That was the other thing I noted was not everyone has the money for college, so there has to be another way to succeed. Like we're all trying
I
to
agree.
fight for a living. Everyone's got to start somewhere. That doesn't, it's not college for everyone. College is great for some people, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's for everyone.
That's true. And I
I think
think also, go ahead, Alan. Sorry.
I think college is a good place to more of a broad focus. Whereas like Matthew had mentioned earlier in the interview that he kind of already knew what he wanted out of his life. Like at a young age, he knew that he wanted to keep busy. He knew he didn't want to make money bagging groceries, and he knew he was good with his hands. So he was like, what can I do to apply these skills that I know I have and things that I'm not interested in and focus on something that I know will make me money. Whereas if you don't have that, if you necessarily don't have that focus or like self-awareness enough to know what you want and don't want, I could see college being a better route, or that education could be pushed because it leaves the doors a lot more open. Whereas trade school is very narrow. And he had mentioned too, one of the cons, I guess, if you had to pick one of trade school, is the fact that it's kind of the trade. You can't really apply the trade school education to other things. It's like you're either doing the plumbing.
Right. You're in that trade. You're in that trade.
Yeah.
You're kind of buying in. And what's really funny is that when he started, everyone laughed at him. Literally, all of our friends were like, "You're a plumber? What's wrong with you?" Like, literally, that's how it was. There was such a stigma and a faux pas on that. And I was like one of the few friends that he had back then that was like, "Dude, go for it. If that's what you want to do it." And this comes from a man, and just to give you a little bit of background from him, his mother and father both graduated from Florida State, both had college degrees. His mother was a teacher in Hillsborough County for 40 years before she passed away, God rest her soul. She was a wonderful human being and was really super disappointed that he wasn't going to college. Like, because she's an English teacher. Like, think about it. Your mom's an English teacher and you're not going to college. Like, he walked into that going, well, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn a trait and something that I can apply to the rest of my life. And look at him now. He's probably one of the most successful people that I know.
Yeah.
And he learned, and he doesn't like, listen, now he runs a business. He doesn't plumb anymore. He doesn't have to. He's got, 50 plus people working for him, and he goes and hunts and fishes. Like, that's his job. And I'm not saying that for the youth that are listening to this. That's a means to an end. He started and he worked his tail off to get where he's at, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. He started and still doesn't have a college education, but he's running a very successful business because he learned a trait, and he took the time to learn this trait and apply his craft, and he mastered it. And he did end up going to school for his master plumbing license, which wasn't easy to pass. And you have to get certifications every few years and things like that. But once you learn something, right, it's like an old hat. You just keep putting it back on every now and then, and you just go and get recertified and go back to work. And that's kind of was my point. So
Yeah. I want to more thing. I'm sorry, brother.
yeah, no, of course.
I think it's also great that he mentioned the fact that there is much plateau in that industry. There's always for advance, because I feel like people that go into trade, at least myself included, with my lack of time in this project, is that you have a notion of trade school that you think, okay, since it's very niche and focused, there's only so much I can do, right? Like, no, once you get into that field, you can still advance. You can become a supervisor. You become a business owner. There are certain avenues within that space that people might overlook.
So many different ways you can go. There really
You know?
is. There's construction, there's service, there's new construction, which right now there's a huge boom in new construction and building. There's tons and tons of money in government contracts, building new facilities. I got another friend of mine who's a plumber who works for a guy who owns the business, and he keeps getting Wawas, contracts for Wawas, and he builds out Wawas, does all the plumbing for all the Wawas in Florida. He drives to Jacksonville and Orlando, and he's a plumber, and he just goes and he learned plumbing from Matt. He went and started working for Matt and didn't have a day of trade school, just went and started working for Matt, doing side jobs and things, learned how to plumb, became better and better at it, and then got a real job doing plumbing. And then now he makes $100,000 a year and has supported 2 kids through college and paid for 2 kids going to college just by learning that craft. And it's not just plumbing, though. I mean, plumbing is one example. You have such a high demand and need for trade. I mean, whether it's welding, bricklaying, maybe in another. Well, it will happen in another podcast that we have. My mother-in-law was a teacher that we interviewed, and she was talking about her brothers were in the trades and were bricklayers, and they were in the bricklayer unions in New Jersey and New York, and they made really good livings laying bricks. And you think about that like we're just laying brick, but no, it's a trade craft, guys, and that's the point that I think is the biggest kind of takeaway from this, is that trade and that skill that you learn is transferable throughout your life. And it's not, you don't have to get one job. You can get several jobs. You can move around. You can get in, and there's a lot of room for advancement, and there's a high need for that level of expertise. So
Yeah, I think bottom line with trade school is like if you're young and you already know what you want to do and you're like, well, where do I even go? Like, how do I apply? Like, there's trade schools for a lot of things, like if you already know what you got to do and you don't want to take, 4, 5, 6 years to get that degree or to do certain, like if you already know the route you're going, there's a lot simpler, shorter, more efficient ways to get where you want to be. And this can be a pro and a con, but once you get that, you're locked into that industry, which can give you a sense of security of knowing like, okay, I don't have to flip back and forth with these other like companies or industries. So if you're really committed to that industry, that is a great route to go. That's kind of like the biggest conclusion I came away with this topic here.
That's a great point, because the job security aspect of it, like college is a great route. Again, if you're unsure, if you have a certain idea of what you want to pursue, but if college isn't the route for you and you want to do a trade school, like there's always going to be a need for that. There's always going to be a job that
Yeah.
needs to work that can be done that you can rely on. So there's success that can be found taking the trade school route. and there shouldn't be any shame in that.
Yeah, and I
absolutely.
think when I started out as a young kid, I started working at call centers, and that's transferable, but there's a limit to where you can go. Like as an agent on the phone taking calls every day, you're gonna hit a plateau unless you go into leadership and advance in that way. And most of the time when you do that, you have to have a college degree. So it wasn't a good choice for me. It was a good choice to pay my bills, but it wasn't a good choice to as a career path. And part of me was kind of like I should have gone with him to go do plumbing, and who knows where I'd be now. So that's kind of why I decided to go back to college at a later time in my life, because I wanted to advance more in the career I have and not limit myself. And we can talk about that in another podcast, but I think it relates to youth. When you're not sure, why not try this and see if it's something that interests you? Because is a quick turnaround with training, and it's an easy and there's a plethora of jobs out there waiting for you, so you can get right into the industry, not have to worry about, am I going to get a job? There's jobs out there, right? I think that's important, and you can make a good living and support yourself for a while doing this. So I think that's a big takeaway for me, was that if you're not sure and you're not focused and you're kind of floating out there after you graduate and you don't really know what you want to do, why not try that? Because if you're not afraid to work, because it's a hard day's work, that's the one kind of disadvantage. You're going to be out in the sun, you're going to sweat, there's going to be some hard work there. But if you're willing to put in that work, there's some rewards there.
Amen, brother. Amen. So, yeah, I think for this topic of youth and training, I think we've covered, kind of touched base on all the different elements of that. So we'll wrap things up here, but thank you guys for watching. Anyone who's listening, I hope you get something out of this and kind of learn the benefits of youth and training. So
And we're going to put
appreciate
some
you guys.
links at the bottom of this podcast for some technical high schools and things for you guys. If you are interested in getting into the trades, we'll put some links up for you guys so you can have some literature to read over.
And shout out to
And
Matthew for the interview, because that was really insightful.
Yeah, and thank you, and big shout out to Total Plumbing Solutions, Tampa, Florida, for your total plumbing needs. If you guys want to reach out or have any plumbing desires or needs, please reach out to Matt Clapp and his company, Total Plumbing, 813-935-2733, 813-935-2733. There's a plug for you, Matt.
We'll make it happen. Yes, sir.
perfect. All right, we will see you guys next time.
Sir.
Yeah.